Alright me guys, Budger and Awunya. You go and I Dark and Young Nura. I'm out here today in a Rimba State Forest. And as you can see, I've got a couple of guests. I've got Pat from Central Coast's largest Facebook group, or largest four-wheel drive Facebook group, Central Coast 4x4 Adventures. And I've got Anthony here from Getting Dirty 4x4 Adventures on YouTube. So we're here today to have a bit of a talk about responsible behaviours when you're off-road.
Yeah, well, I'm new to the YouTube video scene. This is pretty much my first one, so bear with me. I'm an admin member of Central Coast 4x4 Adventures, and I try and organise events and keep behaviour under control. And as of late, the three of us have been very concerned with the condition with a lot of the roads and the tracks in this area. But it's not just around here, it's pretty much the whole of the state. It's the same everywhere. The ground is soaked. It cannot soak up any more rain. It might be dry conditions looking at the moment, but you don't have to dig far
To find water. You were just saying to me off camera how much rain we've had here just on the Central Coast alone.
Yeah, just on the Central Coast alone. I've got my notes here. It was something like 1,129 millimetres of rain in the first 6 months of this year. So
that's a
lot
bloody
of rain.
hell of a lot of rain.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, we've had some really serious floods. I've shown video and footage already of Wollombi, for example. I did my trip out there, and then 2 weeks later the pub there was underwater.
Yeah.
My car would have been about 10 foot underwater at the time. Since then it's actually flooded again, and it's been higher this time around.
They thought it was going to beat the 1949 flood levels, but it ended up stopping about a metre and a half short. Further downstream it broke, it actually beat the 1949 flood record, and the damage to roads and infrastructure and things down there is just absolutely unbelievable.
Even the Hawkesbury River, or the Durban, as the Dharug people call it, that has had some absolutely massive floods. And I was looking at photos yesterday of behind the Nepean Rowing Club at Penrith, and the weir and everything there has all been pretty well near destroyed from these recent floods. And
the latest is that we're about to have our third El Nino in a row, for the third year in a row. So there's that, but then there's also the negative Indian Ocean dipole on the west coast,
which is looking to make it all worse.
So the forecast is that spring and summer is going to be wetter than normal, which in effect will lead to more flooding, more damage to tracks and trails. So we really need to start looking after our tracks and trails and things. Otherwise, this is what we're facing. Having more tracks, more roads, more forests, more national parks and things closed off to public access.
Now, when I first moved up here, this gate behind me wasn't here. I moved up to the Central Coast in 2012, and I remember back then we brought the old Falcon that I had at the time, and we brought it up to the top of the southern end of this track. And I got up there and I thought to myself, no, this is a bit much, I'm turning around going back. Little did I know I'd actually tackled the hardest part at that time. But we did that in the old Falcon. Now, you were saying before about vehicles coming in, lifted patrols and that couldn't get up there.
Yeah, there was one rain event where we were heading up to do a recovery. And there was a Nissan patrol that was really struggling. My Hilux managed to get through, but his patrol got to the point where he just said, no, I can't get up there. The forestry after that fixed the track, put the graders in, more gravel, all that sort of thing. Then we had another rain event. Four-wheel drives got in, chewed the living daylights out of it, as well as all the dumped cars and rubbish and things in there. It cost forestry, I think it was $150,000 to get a crane in to remove all the dumped vehicles and boats and trailers and whatever else was dumped in there. And once they'd finished that, they put these gates in. There's this one here and another one down the bottom. So unless we start really looking after and respecting the fact that yes, it is public land, that we are lucky enough to have the use of, if we don't look after it, that use will be revoked.
I think that's a big part of a lot of people's problem is people think, well, it's public land, which we have every right to be there, and we do. But at the same time, we've got to show it some form of respect, or it is going to be closed off, as exactly as what has been shown behind us here. Anthony, in one of your recent videos, I noticed you were showing sections there where there's a nice solid road to go through, and then there's a sloppy section on the side, and you can see where everybody's just been going through the sloppy section.
Yeah, I just don't understand that. Like, sloppy here and then it's hard there. Why not go around and just...
No.
We all get that you go through there and you're just ripping it up for everyone else.
We all get that it's a little bit of fun, and you know, I know a lot of us like to get our cars dirty and have a bit of a play around in the mud. But there's a point, especially on a road like through Arimba here and through the Wadigan Mountains, where you've got to stop and you've sort of got to think to yourself, hang on, is this a good idea or not?
Yeah, it might be fun at the time, but what if there's a fire or something? The fire trucks can't get through.
Well, that's right. That's exactly right.
I was in the RFS for 15 years as an active member. I'm still involved indirectly by helping out where I can when the balloon goes up. But I do know that the RFS, National Parks and Wildlife and Forestry all rely on these roads and tracks to get in and put bushfires out when they're around, cleaning up after storms, you know, removing fallen trees, all that sort of thing.
Now, just on that note,
so it is a very important fact that they need to be able to get through.
Just on that note, Creek Road up in the Wadigans, would that be classified as a fire trail?
I'm not sure, but as an RFS member, there is no way I would even try and take a fire tanker through there of any description.
The condition of that road, because I know they do try to maintain it, but then again, we get people and certain influencers are guilty of this as well, and unfortunately their bad behaviour breeds bad behaviour. They'll go through it and they'll spin it up, and that road through there just turns to absolute crap.
I've been through there myself a few times. Admittedly, it was well before the rain events that we've had recently. I haven't been through since. I haven't been off-road much at all since the last lot of floods.
I haven't been up into the Wadigans since probably February, maybe March, and as all my viewers know, I love the place. I'm up there as much as I can, but I haven't been there. It's now, August?
Yeah.
So I haven't been there in probably near on 6 months. And it's not just the simple thing of bad conditions either. We see it all the time. We all see it. On all the Facebook groups, whether it be CC4A or Pajero pages or any of the four-wheel drive community pages, as soon as the rain hits, you get all these bogans, for lack of a better word, that want to get out there and cover their rigs in mud. And it seems like the more mud you can cover your car in, the bigger your penis is. Well, you know, I think the more mud you can cover your car in, the more you play with your penis. It really is not something that's necessary. We get it's fun. We've all enjoyed a bit of time messing around in the mud, you know, maybe spinning a bit of a wheel. And I'm not going to say that none of us here have ever done the wrong thing either. Yeah. I know I have spun the tyres. Yeah.
But not in the conditions that we've had lately.
No, definitely not. I know I have spun the tyres in the mud out at Morisset Ward 21. I remember doing a trip out there and it was a bit sloppy, and I put it in two-wheel and did a donut out there. And I'll say it myself, I'm a dickhead for doing it. I shouldn't have done. As was with Anthony's videos, recently you can clearly see a spot where the road there is nice and hard, it's nice and firm, compact, and it's nice and easy to get through. And this is part of what I believe closed it off behind us, is that everybody, or a lot of people, were seeing that bit of mud and a bit of water on the side, and they'd hit that. And I know, when I've seen it myself, and I'm sure we all have, that people will go through and into the section like that and they'll slow down, and in some cases even drop it back into two-wheel drive. And then once they hit the water, they floor it to spin up the tyres and the throw mud and everything else. All that manages to do is rip up the tracks, which results in these things behind us.
Remembering that things like where we are at the moment on Red Hill Road in Arimba, that is a main dirt road track that goes through up to Nura.
Much like
But it
Wodonga Forest
also,
Road.
it leads to all the forestry tracks that come off that, which are the ones that we use to go
Forward
four-wheeling.
driving.
If they close this road,
We
we
lose all of
can't
them.
get to those tracks.
Exactly.
So then where do we go?
And
It won't take long before we'll have nowhere to go.
Yep. I remember not long ago during all the rain events that we were having, you see somebody putting up a post, and I know there was a van just up the road here somewhere, and there were a couple just up the road here somewhere where, oh, I've gone out solo, I'm stuck, can somebody come and help me? I remember one in particular, they had a lot of trouble getting them out, and then a couple of days later there's somebody else in exactly the same spot that was calling for help.
Yeah.
So you know the conditions are worse at this time. Why are you going out there?
Yeah. I've noticed a marked increase in the number of people that head out solo, they get stuck, call for help,
And they got no gear.
and I've got no recovery gear.
Yep.
Well, why are you out there
Just
in the
stupid.
first place?
Yeah.
But more importantly, why do you have no recovery gear?
That's something that I'm actually going to discuss a little bit later in another top 5 video, is things like recovery gear and the top 5 things that you should be keeping in your four-wheel drive at all times before you venture off-road. But that's the thing, you're heading out on your own, well then you don't put yourself in a point where you can even risk getting stuck like that. On a slightly different note in regard to the track conditions, after the amount of water and that we have had soak in the ground, you get a bit of heavy winds, and this has happened quite a bit in a lot of places, and these beautiful big old trees that you see around you start coming down. So
With all the rain we've had, they soak up a lot of the water that's in the ground. That then makes the trees a lot heavier. I noticed that in my industry, clearing vegetation away from power lines, that branches that I would normally cut away from power lines are a lot heavier than they normally are.
Because they're full of water.
They've soaked up that much
Yep.
water, which then also makes them heavier.
Yeah.
And everybody knows what goes up
Must come down.
must come down.
And that's the thing, there's been people up in the Wodonga Mountains I know of that have been killed from falling trees because they were out there in poor conditions. In April 2022, there was a family, or a mother and son, I believe it was, killed up in the Blue Mountains where they were doing one of the hiking trails after really bad conditions, and the ground below them gave away.
Yeah.
Sorry about the noise of the motorbikes, we are in a bit of a popular area. But the ground below them gave away, and unfortunately 2 of the 4 in that family group were actually killed from that. Now, as you mentioned before too, Pat, with the cars and trailers and things like that were dumped off the end of the cliffs here. As you can see behind us, we've got the report illegal dumping phone number and everything there. Well, report illegal dumping, contrary to a lot of people's belief, are not actually there to lock us out of everything. The idea behind things like this, Clean Up Australia Day and all that, is to try and keep the places clean and open. Problem is, the more it happens, then eventually it gets to a point where it starts becoming too costly, and that's the option they're left with. You know, we all complain about national parks wanting fees for passes and to let us into different national parks and things like that, or even
It
for
costs
camping.
money to maintain these places.
Well, that's exactly right. It costs money for national parks to maintain it. We're really lucky with areas such as this, and with the Wodonga Mountains, with the Pines campgrounds and all that sort of thing, where they've got drop toilets and garbage bins, and people that empty the bins come around and things like that, and they're not charging us anything to go and enter there. But if we keep trashing the places, they're either going to lock it or they're going to install a fee.
Yeah, we'll have to get
it's got to
access
happen.
permits and all that sort of thing, like
Yeah.
Stockton Beach.
Well, similar things happen on
all
Stockton
those
where they were
sorts of-
damaging things and
So
trying to trash it.
Really got to start thinking about our actions, and that's everybody.
Yep.
Need to think about our actions. And okay, yeah, it might be fun at the time. It gives authorities like forestry, national parks, and things like that reason to close things. How about we give them a reason to keep things open?
That's exactly right. And
Right, by knowing that there are people out there who genuinely care about the area and respect the area and like the fact that we are allowed to go into these areas and enjoy them.
exactly. Now, there's a young fella that I've been seeing a lot of on Instagram lately. I don't know his actual name, but his Instagram handle is Back to the Bush. And he's down in the Blue Mountains area, and he's doing everything he can to clean places up and to try and talk of national parks and everyone else to keep these tracks open for us and to reopen tracks that have already been closed. Because, yes, we do all have a right to enjoy them, but if you're not going to respect it, you're not going to have it. It's that simple. You just can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
Now, one other thing I want to talk about a little bit here is something I've seen quite considerably over the last couple of years, and that is YouTubers and influencers doing the wrong things out in the bush. Anthony and myself are both YouTubers. We're only small channels. Neither of us are monetised yet. I think we've both got 300 and something subscribers.
Yeah.
But we see a lot of these other YouTubers, and I get that it gets the clicks, it gets the views, it gets the likes. But we see a lot of other YouTubers, and I'm not going to mention any particular names, that find a hill in a twin-lock vehicle with big lift and massive tyres and have to go full noise, full ball, spinning tyres all the way up the hill, where a near stock or 2-inch minor lifted vehicle behind him can just walk up the same hill with only a single locker. Or people get out into the bush, whether it be on private property or public land, and sit there and do donuts. In the Ralston videos and the Turon videos, when we got out to Woolshed Flats, there were some young guys set up at a camp there, and a nice big area in front and behind of their camp, and there was fences, wire fences like you can see behind us here, behind their camp. Yet one of the vehicles is on the other side of that wire fence, bogged to its diffs, and there's another one dragging a massive log back out of the bush to go on their campfire. Well, it's soaking wet, it's not going to burn anyway. And all in front of the campsite's just torn up where they've been sitting there doing donuts. It's that. This is Turon National Park, and people are going to complain when we can't get access to it, when it's gated off like it is here behind us. Because we get it's a bit of fun and games. We get it's enjoyable. Again, we've all
for everyone else.
Yeah, we've all done the wrong things, but it's behaviours like that do ruin it for the majority of us.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, as you said, we're all guilty of doing some things out in the bush that we now look back on and think...
not always just out in the bush either.
But the thing is, if we can change our mentality towards the bush, so can everybody else.
And, yeah, we've all done the wrong thing. We've all been responsible and guilty of doing stupid things. But it's a matter of whether you learn from it and whether you start to see the impacts that you're actually having. Even things... I did Clean Up Australia Day a couple of years ago, and you guys can go back in my videos and see that. And I filled a chaff bag within about 10 minutes, just walking along the side of a track, picking up all the rubbish that's just been thrown out of cars. Now, this particular section was one that I wouldn't expect sedans to go along, even though it is a gazetted road and there's homes at the end of it where you can get sedans and hatchbacks and everything all the way through. This little section was just off to the side, tracks off to the sides of it, and to fill one of those white bags, like the Respect the Bush drifter bags, to fill one of them in a matter of minutes from the bottles and cans and crap that's just thrown out the windows of cars. You might think it's just one. You might think it's just a little burnout. Things like that. It breeds that sort of attitude, and it teaches other people that that's the right thing to do. And I think that's a really big thing, especially when it comes to influencers and big influencers. Again, we've only got 300 and something each subscribers, but there's some there with hundreds of thousands of subscribers that are doing these sorts of things, doing behaviours, doing illegal modifications to their vehicles, and then complaining when they get defected. I remember one in particular not too long ago that knew they had illegal modifications, they got defected, and then they're all over social media having a whinge, oh, bloody cops, Well, your vehicle is illegally modified. It's that simple.
And you got the evidence right there.
Yeah. It's things like that for the majority of us that love getting out and exploring and having a good time in the bush, it's things like that really does ruin it for the rest of us. Yeah. It really does ruin it for us all.
It seems to be the minority that screw it up for the majority.
Oh, big time. Big time.
And not just forward driving, but in most things these days.
Yep. Well, I've sat there this morning at a car meet, surf sanding cars. I was back there this morning. Again, I've done a video on that. And there's over 200 vehicles there. There's hot rods, there's massive rumbly Tiranas and Falcons and everything else, and absolutely amazing cars down there. They're getting more Ferraris and bloody Porsches and exotic cars. They're getting a lot more tuner cars than that too. When they take off relatively gentle to try and get out into the flow of 80k an hour traffic, you take off, you might need to put your foot down a little to get into the flow, but when you're sitting there on the limiter trying to get out into that sort of thing and you can hear it on the limiter, well, it's that sort of thing. It's the burnouts, which generally don't happen, but it's that sort of thing that still will close events like that down. And because of one or two idiots that can't control themselves, there's 200 plus others that won't be able to enjoy the event. The other thing I do want to talk about is campfires. When we go out in the bush, we all know to, one, bring your rubbish home with you. If you can take it into the bush, you can bring it home. You can take a gazebo or a chair or whatever and it breaks, you can still bring it home. Talking quickly back again on the rubbish, on the Central Coast here, we get 6 free council collections or curbside collections every year. Yeah. There's no need to be throwing it in the bush. Contact the council, put it on the bloody... If you've used all your curbside collections, speak to a neighbour or a friend and see if you might be able to drop it on theirs.
Yeah. Hey, mate, can I stick some stuff on your thing? I've used up all mine.
Yeah, all good, mate, all good. Yeah. And
it's not hard.
Yeah, I use the curbside collections quite regularly. But campfires in the bush, I am of the belief that I need a campfire to keep me warm, not a campfire to keep the top of the trees here warm.
Yeah, that's stupid.
It's my first camp in the Pines campground a number of years back now. There was a group set up there and one of them had a Pajero, Gen 3, the same as mine, and they had a rooftop tent. The flames were taller than their vehicle. I could not see their vehicle behind the flames. Their fire was that goddamn big.
Yeah. What's the point of it?
Why? Why do you need... And the part that really worried me that night was that they were right on the exit road.
Yeah.
Sort of right on the point where if it gets out of control, that's our exit.
Yeah, nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So they put everybody else in that campground at risk.
Yeah. I saw a campfire at the Pines camping ground a few years ago where, nice work guys, let's build a campfire on top of the timber picnic tables. That worked really well.
Idiots.
Great.
Yeah, some free firewood, pack of morons. And then, again, with the campfires, okay, fair enough, throw some food scraps in there or throw some cardboard paper, the empty carton for your beers or whatever in there, but don't throw the cans in there. Don't throw the bottles in there. Don't throw the bottle caps in there. Aluminium foil and all this sort of stuff. Plastic even doesn't go in the campfire because it doesn't break down. It doesn't burn. It might melt. You might not be able to see it, but it doesn't break down.
The other problem they have is, they get up in the morning, they'll stoke the fire up to get all nice and warm while they have their brekkie and stuff. They pack up their 4 drives and leave.
And leave it with the
that
fire
fire's still going. Oh, we'll throw a bit of dirt on it, she'll be right. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure that it
is out.
All the hot coals, not just the flames, but the hot coals are extinguished properly.
Yeah. And especially don't bury them in sand.
No.
Never bury them in sand.
They can stay hot under sand or loose dirt
for days.
Dirt, sand can hold that heat for a long time. Then you have the other problem where I'm sure a lot of you've seen on the news where a child was walking around a campsite and stepped into an area where there had been a campfire and it was long put out,
burns.
stepped through the surface and their legs went into the hot embers under the ground and copped like 3rd degree burns on their legs.
I don't recommend it either.
No, definitely not.
So
definitely not.
Make sure your fires are out.
Yep.
If you have to. I have one in my vehicle, one of these pop-out
fire
pits that contains a fire.
Yep.
It's limited in size, so we're not heating up the tops of the trees, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's only a small amount of hot coals I have water on the back of my vehicle.
Yep. And as you guys know from watching my videos, my campfires normally aren't much bigger than this little table in front of me. You know, a couple of bits of wood on there, just enough to keep a little bit of heat coming through, and that's all I need. Yeah. It's more than enough for half a dozen people to sit around. You don't need a big raging fire.
Just on the subject of like travelling through national parks and looking after the tracks and things, as we've mentioned that trees do fall down across tracks. If you come across a tree that's fallen across a track and it is too big to like physically drive over, you don't have chainsaws, which I'm not sure that you're actually allowed to use in a national park to clear the track.
I will be looking into that ruling further
I'd like
later.
To look at that too. But also, if the tree's fallen across the track and you can't get over it, don't create a new track around it, because that's damaging
everything else.
The vegetation in that area, some which is sensitive, and if rangers catch you doing it, you're into
huge fines.
Huge fines.
Yep.
So if you get to a track you can't get through because of a fallen tree,
turn around,
head back out.
And I think that's something that should be on any track that you're doing. If you're not 100% confident, or you think it's going to be really difficult and you're going to have to spin tyres and tear things up and stuff like that, like me, I don't have a winch on the car. You get to a section like that, don't be afraid to turn around.
Just turn around, it's easier.
If you've got a winch, rather than sitting there spinning the crap out of your tyres, go and hook the winch up and use that to pull you up the hill, if you have to. Yeah. Don't just sit there spinning it, because that only makes things worse. Another quick thing in regard to travelling through national parks and even state forests. This is something that I personally do. I don't know if you guys actually have or not. But when I came in here this morning, I pulled over down the bottom, and the first thing I did is add down to 25 psi and engage 4 high. It's a 2-wheel drive road. I know it can be done easy in any sort of a car, but the reduction in those tyre pressures and the engaging of 4-wheel drive stops the tyre slippage a little bit more, and it helps maintain the roads, and it helps stop corrugations and things like that. And I've said this a number of times in videos, that it just simply helps to stop corrugations, and it helps to maintain the roads and the tracks, and therefore forestries or national park or whoever it is don't need to come out so often and grade the roads and spend so much money looking after them, because the more money that they have to spend, which is largely taxpayer funded, then the more chance we've got of having these things, and none of us want them.
Yeah, no, we just need to learn to change our mentality and our thinking on how we go about using these areas.
Yeah, definitely. And remember, just because the blacktop stops doesn't mean the rules do. You know,
true.
These areas are still gazetted roads, and you can still be fined for driving unlicensed, driving unregistered, driving speeding. Intoxicated, using your phone, speeding, all that stuff that you can get done on a public road, you can still be fined for in here as well. So just remember that. Something that did shit me when we did the beginners run a couple of years ago in Morisset Ward 21, there were quite a number of people driving their vehicles around there with a can of Woodstock in their hand. I hate seeing that.
People riding in the back of a ute. Can't do it.
Even though Morisset's not necessarily a gazetted road, it's not it's one of those places. But
it's private land in
Ward
21.
It is. But you still, it's stupid, it's irresponsible, it's dangerous, it's reckless. And it's that behaviour that gives us all the bad name and will get us locked out of more and more places. And look, 4-wheel drivers already have a name, especially for the greenies, that we're out here destroying everything. We want to change that. And there's a lot of us out there that want to change that and want people to know that we respect what's around us. And the majority of us do come out here and do the right thing.
We spend a lot of money on our vehicles, upgrading suspension and tyres and all these things, and having all the camping gear and a rooftop tent and all the other stuff. It's not so that we can get out here and destroy the place. It's so that we can get out here and enjoy it.
Exactly. And
try and do it without causing as little damage to the tracks as we can.
Yeah, exactly. Alright guys, I think this video has gone long enough. I hope you have learned a couple of things from this one. I hope you can stop and think maybe about some of your behaviours. Again, We're all guilty of doing the wrong thing. But there comes a point where you've got to realise that it's just not the right thing to be doing, and it's going to cause problems. Same deal as anybody doing burnouts on the street. Well, it's not the right thing to be doing. It is dangerous. It is reckless, and you're gonna end up facing consequences for it. So, all right, guys.
And if you don't face the consequences, it's everybody else that gets locked out of these places that does.
Yep.
And that's what it boils down to.
Yeah. All right, guys. That's it from us. Again, I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please hit subscribe if you haven't already.
And thank you for inviting me along.
No dramas, mate. Yeah. No dramas to you,
Good
mate.
day.
And, take care, peace, and as always, guys, I'll see you on the tracks. Yano.